In our previous teaching, we learned that the time of the judge Jephthah marked a turning point in Israel's history. This change is even more evident in the account of Samson. Now, previously, when Israel turned away from God and God allowed their enemies to oppress them, Israel recognized that they had sinned and repented. God then responded by raising up a judge who would lead his people in battle against their enemies. God would provide the victory, and the land would have rest for a period of time. In the days leading up to the rise of Samson as judge over Israel, there is no mention that Israel recognized that they had forsaken God and as a result repented from the ways that they had done evil in the sight of the Lord. Now, in spite of this, God does appoint Samson as judge over Israel, but Samson will never lead his people in battle, nor will there be a dramatic victory over Israel's enemies, leading to a time of rest for Israel. Everything had changed in the relationship between God and Israel. Now, what did God have in mind when he chose Samson? And did Samson fulfill God's plan? I'm Dan Cathcart, and this is the Promise of Rest. After Jephthah died, 3 judges followed in rapid succession, with each one judging Israel for only a handful of years. Ibzan judged Israel for 7 years, Elon 10 years, and Abdon 8 years. This rapid turnover of leadership indicates the instability of Israel. 17th century theologian Matthew Henry comments on the reduced length of tenure of these judges. For the transgressions of a land, many are the princes thereof, many in short time successively, good men being removed in the beginning of their usefulness and by the time that they had applied themselves to their business. Now, this pattern of rapid turnover in the leaders was also true of the kings of Judah in the years leading up to the Babylonian captivity. In the time of Yeshua, this pattern is manifest in the rapid turnover of the office of high priest. Josephus lists 28 high priests from the time of Herod the Great to the destruction of the temple. Now, after the death of the judge Abdon, Israel again did evil in the sight of God. Judges 13, verse 1. Again, the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord delivered them into the hand of the Philistines for 40 years. When God delivered Israel from the hand of the Amorites in the time of Jephthah, he did not deliver them from the Philistines. This may have been partly because of the covenant that Abraham had made with Abimelech, king of the Philistines, and which Isaac renewed, and partly due to the changed relationship between God and Israel. The ArtScroll commentary on Judges explains this new situation in Israel. In this new period, the people's descent was so serious that they did not merit a complete salvation of the sort that had been achieved by such judges as Deborah and Gideon. Nevertheless, God did not wish to let the Philistines go completely unpunished or continue their depredations undeterred. Though the Philistines would not be vanquished, God in his mercy wanted their aggressiveness to be curbed. Samson became God's agent to accomplish this. Samson is different from any other judge. He would need to deliver Israel and ascend to the office of judge without widespread support from the rest of Israel. Because he would never lead the Israelites in battle against their enemies, his deliverance would be accomplished single-handedly. As such, it would require stealth and careful planning. This means that the choice of Samson for judge would have to be indicated in some other fashion. Now, God made his choice of Samson before he was even conceived. God selected the family of Manoah of the tribe of Dan, whose wife was barren. Judges 13, verse 2. Now there was a certain man from Zorah of the family of the Danites, whose name was Manoah, and his wife was barren and had no children. As we have seen throughout this series, the meaning of names adds to the depth of meaning of the account. In this case, the father of Samson was named Manoah. His name, number 4595, means rest. It's from a word manoach, number 4494, meaning a place of rest. It can also be read as a variation of the name Noah, with the Hebrew letter mem in front of the name. The letter mem indicates the preposition from, so Manoah's name could indicate a time or place like that, from Noah. Manoah was from the tribe of Dan. The name Dan, number 1835, means judge. Jacob prophesied over Dan in Genesis 49:16 that he would judge his people. Now finally, Manoah is from the city of Zorah. The name Zorah is number 6881 from 6880 and means hornet. God said in Exodus 23:28 that he would send the hornet to drive the Canaanites out of the promised land. When we put these meanings together, the time of Samson was like the time of Noah, when evil was rampant. Samson would be an irritant to the Philistines, like a stinging hornet. He would bring judgment to both the Philistines and to Israel. However, in the midst of this judgment, there is a place of rest available if only Israel would seek for it. Now, this is very similar to the situation when Yeshua was born. Yeshua would bring judgment to Israel, but there was a place for rest for those who would accept Yeshua as their deliverer. Also, like Yeshua, Samson's birth was miraculous and announced beforehand by an angel. The angel goes first to his mother and then to his father. Judges 13:3-5. And the angel of the Lord appeared to the woman and said to her, "Indeed, now you are barren and have borne no children, but you shall conceive and bear a son. Now therefore, please be careful not to drink wine or similar drink, and not to eat anything unclean. For behold, you shall conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come upon his head. For the child shall be a Nazirite to God from the womb, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hands of the Philistines." Now again, like the conception of Yeshua, the angel tells the mother the purpose of her son's life. Yeshua would save his people from their sins. Samson would begin to deliver Israel from the Philistines. Samson did not succeed in delivering Israel from the Philistines. He only began the process. David would be the one to complete the process 100 years or so later. This process of deliverance connects Samson with David. In a similar way, we can look at Yeshua as only beginning the process of salvation. He will complete the process when he returns as the Son of David. Yeshua is both the author and finisher of our faith. God told Samson's mother that Samson would be set apart from the time of his birth. Now, since she carried a child in her body who would be a Nazirite from birth, she was also to refrain from wine and to separate herself as holy by avoiding any situation that would make her unclean. Numbers chapter 6 lists the requirements for a person who takes a Nazirite vow. The Nazirite was not to eat or drink anything made from grapes, not to cut or shave his head, and not to go near a dead person. This third restriction, which would be a problem for a man called to deliver his people from the oppression of the Philistines, a careful reading of the message the angel of the Lord spoke to Samson's mother reveals that the angel only said that Samson was to refrain from any product made from grapes and not to cut or shave his head. There is no mention of not going near a dead person. The Art Scroll Commentary on Judges notes this omission. According to the halakhically accepted view in Nazir 4b, Samson had a unique status called Nazir Shimshon, which permitted him to touch dead bodies. Unlike an ordinary Nazirite, since the angel who imposed the status on him omitted mention of contamination to the dead. Radek conjectures that even without this status, Samson would have been permitted to touch the dead Philistines because his personal mitzvah of defending Israel required him to do so. Now, when Samson's mother relayed the news to Manoah about conceiving and bearing a child, he prayed to the Lord for guidance on how to raise his son. Judges 13, verse 8. Then Manoah prayed to the Lord and said, "O my Lord, please let the man of God whom you sent come to us again and teach us what we shall do for the child who will be born." Now God answered Manoah's prayer and again sent the angel who once more appeared to the woman. She brought Manoah to the angel, whom they thought was a man of God, such as a prophet. The angel reiterated that the child should be raised as a Nazirite to the Lord. Then, like Gideon, Manoah wanted to extend hospitality to the man of God. Judges 13, 15 through 16. Then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, "Please let us detain you, and we will prepare a young goat for you." And the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, "Though you detain me, I will not eat your food, but if you offer a burnt offering, you must offer it to the Lord." For Manoah did not know he was the angel of the Lord. Who is this angel of the Lord? Is this angel like the angel Gabriel who brought the message to Mary about conceiving and giving birth to Yeshua, or is he a pre-incarnate manifestation of Yeshua, the Word of God? When Gabriel appeared to Mary, he began his message by telling her his name. However, the angel of the Lord that appeared to Manoah and his wife does not tell them his name. When Manoah asked for his name, the angel responded that it is wonderful or secret. Judges 13, 17 through 18. Then Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, "What is your name, that when your words come to pass, we may honor you?" And the angel of the Lord said to him, "Why do you ask my name, seeing it is wonderful?" The Hebrew word translated as wonderful is peli, Numbers 63:83, meaning remarkable, secret, or wonderful. It is from pala, Numbers 63:81, the same word that Isaiah declared is the name of Messiah in Isaiah 9:6. Manoah proceeded to bring a burnt offering to the Lord and sacrifice it on a nearby rock. As he did so, the angel of the Lord did a wonderful thing. Judges 13, 19 through 20. And Manoah took a kid with a food offering and offered it upon a rock to the Lord, and did wonderfully. And Manoah and his wife looked on. For it happened, when the flame went up toward heaven from off the altar, the angel of the Lord went up in the flame of the altar, and Manoah and his wife looked on and fell on their faces to the ground. The Hebrew word translated as wonderfully in this passage is a form of pala, the name wonderful, given to Messiah. The angel of the Lord, whose name is wonderful, does wonderfully as he raises in the smoke of the offering to the Lord. Leviticus 17:1 tells us that the smoke of the burnt offering is a sweet, pleasant, restful aroma to the Lord. Manoah's wife did conceive and have a son, and she named him Samson. Now, like Yeshua, the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. Judges 13:24 and 25. So the woman bore a son and called his name Samson, and the child grew, and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to move upon him at Manahath Dan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. Samson is number 8123, and it means sunlight. It could be that as a Nazirite from birth, Samson reflected that glory of his separation to God. Lamentations 4:7 says that God's Nazirites shine like rubies and sapphires. The Art Scroll Commentary on Judges compares Samson to the sun. The first three letters of Samson's name, the Shin, Mem, Shin, means sun, and God is referred to as the sun, for a sun and shield is Hashem. Psalms 84, verse 12. Maharsha comments that the sun's rays can be harmful or beneficial depending on the recipient. Thus, Samson's name alludes to the sun because his activities were benevolent to Israel and punitive to Philistia. The noon at the end of his name alludes to the possessive form. He was the sun and shield of Israel. The Spirit of the Lord began to move on Samson while he was still in the camp of Dan, where he had been raised. The NKJV Study Bible comments on the Hebrew verb translated as move. The Hebrew verb translated move can be translated impel. The Spirit of the Lord was pushing Samson toward doing the work that God wanted him to do. Now, these two verses that conclude chapter 13 emphasize that Samson's future actions, as strange as they may seem, were guided by the Spirit of the Lord. Samson would not act as previous judges had done, leading an army against the Philistines. Because Israel had not repented and turned back to the Lord, they did not merit God's complete salvation. An armed uprising would not have had God's support and would have brought down the wrath of the Philistines on Israel. Instead, Samson sought out an opportunity to be a hornet to the Philistines. The Art Scroll Commentary on Judges explains Samson's plan. Samson, therefore, did two things. He sought pretexts that would give him excuses to attack the Philistines who wronged him, and he acted alone. Samson's plan involved the pretense of marrying a Philistine woman. This act would give Samson inside access to the Philistines. Judges 14, verses 1 through 4. Now Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. So he went up and told his father and mother, saying, I have seen a woman in Timnah of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore get her for me as a wife. Then his father and mother said to him, Is there no woman among the daughters of your brethren, or among my people, that you must go and get a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines? And Samson said to his father, Get her for me, for she pleases me well. But his father and mother did not know that it was of the Lord, that he was seeking an occasion to move against the Philistines, for at that time the Philistines had dominion over Israel. Samson's decision to take a wife from the Philistines was of the Lord. The Scriptures clearly tell us that Samson was acting under God's direction. His goal was to find a pretext for attacking the Philistines that would not cause the Philistines to attack all of Israel. In other words, he set himself up as a target for the Philistine wrath. The Scriptures relate an unusual and somewhat baffling event that occurred when Samson traveled to Timnah with his parents to arrange for the marriage. As they went by the vineyards of Timnah, a lion attacked Samson. Judges 14, 5-6. So Samson went down to Timnah with his father and mother and came to the vineyards of Timnah. Now to his surprise, a young lion came roaring against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came mightily upon him, and he tore the lion apart as one would have torn apart a young goat. Though he had nothing in his hand, but he did not tell his father or mother what he had done. Now it seems that Samson separated from his parents when they approached the vineyard. Perhaps Samson chose to avoid the vineyard because of his status as a Nazirite. Now when the lion attacked him, the Spirit of the Lord gave him strength to tear apart the lion with his bare hands. Now what is the significance of a lion? The Scripture describes two other instances where a person has an encounter with a lion. The first is in 1 Samuel 17:36, when David, testifying that God was with him in his role of a shepherd, stating that God delivered the lion into his hands. The second incident involved a prophet of the Lord who deviated from God's instructions found in 1 Kings 13:24. He was met on the road by a lion that killed him. The man who was following God's instructions was able to defeat the lion with God's strength. The man who did not follow God's instructions was himself defeated. Samson's ability to defeat the lion with God's strength demonstrates that he is following God's instructions. The ArtScroll commentary on Judges explains how this encounter was a sign from God. By sending a lion toward him, God was hinting that Samson's intended marriage would be an unpleasant encounter. But by enabling him to kill the lion easily, God showed that he would not abandon him. Now when Samson returned to Timnah for his wedding, he went aside to see what had happened to the carcass of the lion. He saw that the bees had nested in the carcass and produced honey. He took some of the honey and ate it, and gave some to his parents. Now what's the significance of this honey? The psalmist tells us that God's judgments are sweeter than honey. Psalms 19:9-10. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, yea, much fine gold, sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. Samson uses this encounter with the lion as a source of a riddle that he would pose to the Philistines. It would become the pretext he needed so that he could attack the Philistines. Now, how will Samson bring judgment on the Philistines? The Spirit of the Lord came upon Samson 3 times as he interacted with the Philistines. The number 3 is a significant number in the Bible. It appears multiple times in this next part of the account of Samson, as does the number 10. In the next teaching, we will examine how God uses Samson as the son and shield of Israel, and how Samson's pride led to his downfall. I'm Dan Cathcart for Moed Ministries International. Shalom, and be blessed.